In this video, we will discuss about what exactly are deferred and promises and how to achieve both of these things by using $Q service. Now, promises are nothing but they are post-processing logic which you want to execute after an action is completed. Again, I repeat, promises are nothing but they are post-processing logic which you want to execute after an action is completed, while deferred decides when and how this logic should be run. So you can think about that promises define what has to run, while deferred decides when and how these promises will run. For example, now think about this. If you remember, we had a screen, and in this screen you can go and you can add a new record. So I can go and say something like this, right? And I can go and say submit. Now once I do submit, and afterwards, when I get data back from the server, I need to do two things, right? One is I need to first go and clear these text boxes, and second is I need to go and bind the grid, right? So in other words, when I click on submit, if you see, it has cleared the text box and it has binded that record on the grid. So in other words, at this moment, my success function of $HTTP service, when it returns back or when it finishes, I need to do two things. One is I need to go and load the grid, right? So this is the first thing. I need to go and load the grid. And second is I need to go and clear the record from the UI. So these are two post-processing logic which I want to execute after this action has completed. Now remember that over here the code is now connected with $HTTP. It can get connected with any other service, okay, or it can be just after a function call. So it is not really attached with $HTTP. So basically, promises are nothing but they are logics which you want to run after action is completed or after some kind of functionality has been executed. Here is a visual explanation of defer and promises. So as I said, that promises are nothing but they are logics which you want to fire. They are what part of the logics which you want to fire after action completes. But now again, you want to fire these logics depending on whether your action is successful, whether your action is not successful, means there are errors, or is it just a notification. So over here you can see what happens is some action completes, right? This action can be a success of HTTP post. This action can be a simple function call or an asynchronous call. So once that action completes, defer comes into action. Defer is nothing but it decides when and how these logics should run. So defer says, okay, is this action successful? If the action is successful, then please run logic 1 and logic 2 promises. If the action is failed, then please run these logics or these promises. Or if it is a notification, then run some other logic. So basically, defer decides how and when the promises should run, while promises define what are the logic that should run, right? So the promises are the actual logics, while defer is just a conditional thing which decides which logic should run. Now in order to create defer objects and promise objects, we need to use something called as the $Q service. So we need to use the service of Angular termed as $Q. You can see that I have asked Angular to inject the $Q service in the binding code function, right? So from the $Q service, you will first create a defer object, and from defer object you will then create a promise object. and then after that to the promise object you will attach your logics. So basically it's a three-step process. First thing, you have called the $Q service over here. Second, from $Q service, call the defer object. From the defer object, create your promise object, and in the promise object, go and attach your logic of success and failure. So first thing, let us go and create a defer object. So we're going to go and say where is a $Q dot defer. From the defer object, go and create a promise object. So we'll say defer dot promise, and then to the promise object go and attach your success and failure functions. And then after this you will say promise dot then. So here you will give which success function you want to call, then which failure function you want to call, and which are the notification functions which you want to call. So you can give three functions over here. One is function for success, for failure, and for notification. And you can go and give series of function like this. So promise dot then success 1, failure 1, notification 1, and then success 2, failure 2, and notification 2. Right? So basically you can see that first I create the defer object. From that I created the promise object, and then in the promise object I have defined the chain of logics which I want to execute. Right? So at this moment we don't have a notification function, so I will remove this. I just have success and failure, right? So let us do like this. So we will say here $scope dot first thing in the success function. If you see, we want to execute two things. Actually we do not have anything in the failure at this moment, but still we'll put some failure functions. So here it is saying $scope dot customer. So that is the first thing which we want to fire. So I will say load customers or set customers. Right? So that is the first logic what we want to execute. Second, we want to go and clear the customer record, right? Clear customer. So the second thing what we need to do. So clear customer is this. So you can see now all these logics I'm putting into separate functions here. Clear customer. Right here there is no data. So basically I will say that when it is successful. So Control C, Control V. Now look at the way I am defining my promises. So I will say that okay, first thing, go and clear the customers. Right? Second thing, go and set the customers. Second thing, go and clear the customers. Right? Now I don't have any failure functions at this moment, but let me go and just say that there are two failures which I will define. I'll just put an alert over there. Okay. Later on, when we do error handling, we will replace this failure functions appropriately, but at this moment let me just create one failure 1. Right? In this I will just put an alert for now. Later on when we do error handling, we will go and replace these codes properly. So one is failure 1 and another one is failure 2. Right? So again, what, because these are attached to $scope, we can't just say clear customers. Right? So $scope, wish we start getting IntelliSense over here. failure 1, spoke dot failure 2, right? Great. So you can see now I have defined two chain in the promises. One chain of success which will first fire set customers and then clear customer, and second chain which will fire failure 1 and failure 2. Now what I need to do is, in my success function, I just need to go and say defer dot resolve. So remember, there are three states, right, of defer you can call. One is defer dot resolve, another one is defer dot reject, and defer dot notify. Okay, so three states are there for defer, and as I've said that defer is nothing but it actually decides which chain of promises should fire, right? So when I say defer dot resolve, means I want to fire all the success promises. So I want to fire set customers and clear customers. Whereas a defer dot reject, it will fire failure 1 and failure 2. And also very quickly, in the resolve, I need to also pass data, because remember that this data is used by the set customers function, right? So let us go and do a control F5. Let us see if this is working or not. So control F5. So you can see that our application is running, but it is showing some errors over here. So let us do a F12 to just see what the errors are. F12, what happened? And there the errors are seen. You can see that it is saying, if I just scroll up, it does not move up. It is saying $scope.set customers is not a function. Okay, and that is understood because if you see here, customer.html, actually what we have done is we are calling the $scope.set customer at the top, but they are defined down, right? So let us go and move them at the top. Okay, let us go and move them at the top. At the same time, I have a bit, I'm suspicious, that this $scope.set customers will work here. Let me do like this, because let me make them as normal functions. After seeing that error, I have a suspicion that we will have further problems. So let us not attach these functions with $scope. Let us make them normal functions. I'll tell you why I'm making them normal functions. So let us do that. And we are going to go and end up with interesting errors now. So be ready for it. Failure 1. Failure 2. Right. So what we will do here is we will go and attach normal functions. So this is set customers. This is clear customer. This is failure 1. This is failure 2. So rather than attaching it to a scope, I have just made them normal JavaScript functions. Okay, and let us go and reload it. Oh, you can see that he is showing me failure 1 and failure 2. That is because I have written the syntaxes wrongly. See, you can see that when you pass a method, do not put this double brackets like this, or else it becomes a call. So that's why what is happening is he's actually trying to make a call, right? So let me go and do this. Let us go back. Let us reload this. So there it is. Looks like everything is fine. So now if I go and do a submit, you can see now he has cleared the fields as well as he has loaded my grid. So if we just go and put some debug points here, let us do that. So look at this. So I'm going to go and put a debugger here. Let me put a debugger here, and let me put a debugger before the resolve to just know that. All right. So if you see now, we'll do a F12. Yeah, it opens in a new window. That's fine. Let us load this. Right. So now when I click on submit, you can see that my debugger has started. Right. So that my debugger has started. You can see first thing, the success function is called, and that is right. Then we call the resolve, and you can see because this set customers is the first success chain, right? It is first calling the set customers. After that, he calls clear customers, right? So basically, promises means nothing. It is a chain of functions, a chain of logics which you want to execute, and defer decides that you want to execute the reject logic or you want to execute the resolve logic. Also in the same way, we can go and write for errors as well. So we can say here dot error function err, right, and error. So here I will say defer dot reject. Defer dot reject. Okay, so let us go and test this as well. What I will do is for errors, I will go and hit some other URL. You can see that I am trying to hit some other URL which does not exist, right? So let us do a Control F5. So there our application is running. So now if I click on submit, you can see that it shows failure 1 and then it shows failure 2, right? So basically, if there is an error, he will go and fire the error logic, right? So if there is an error, he will go and fire failure 1 and failure 2 in sequence. If it is successful, it will fire set customers and clear customers in sequence. In other words, promises are nothing but they are chain of logics, and these chain of logics are decided by defer when they should execute. But now let me again point out a very, very important thing about promises here. Promises can execute only once. Let me again say, in promises, the execution of the reject and the resolve can happen only once. For example, I go and say submit, it says failure 1, it says failure 2, right? Now again, if I click on submit, it does not execute those promises again, right? So in other words, the reject and the resolve, they happen only once, but the notification can happen multiple times. Again, I repeat this statement. As the name says promise, normally you don't deliver promises again and again. You deliver it once and then you leave it, right? So in the same way here also, promises are delivered only once. After that, you have to go and again create a new promise object. So in case you want to go and execute multiple times, then you should create notifications. For example, let me go and copy this and let me create here notify 1 and this is notify 2. So I'll say notify 1 and notify 2. So now in this promises, the third parameter is the notify parameter. So here I will say I want to give notify 1, here I want to give notify 2, right? And what I will do, I will not say reject here, I will say notify. So notify can happen multiple times. So let us go and reload this. Okay. If I say submit, you can see now notification is firing, but this can fire multiple times. You can see it is just working, right? So remember, notify can fire multiple times, but resolve and reject can fire only once. So in case you want your promises to run again and again, so what you should do is you should actually create these objects. So let me do like this. So we'll just say these promises object has to be initialized again and again. So let us go and create a function here called as init promises, right? So initialize promises, and in this complete code will go Control X, Control V, right? And but you need the defer object outside, right? Because without this it would be very difficult to get access of this defer object. So basically this initialize promises I will run before I call the HTTP post. So before I call the HTTP post, I will go and run the init promises, and then I can say defer.resolve and defer.reject multiple times. Reject. So this should work. So now if I go and reload this, remember now there is an error, right? So if I say submit, it says failure 1, failure 2. If I say again submit, failure 1, failure 2, right? So basically you have to initialize your promises and defer object again and again before you make that method call. So that brings us to the end of this video. In this video we discussed about defer and promises. Now the next video is coming from my dear friend as well as a great Angular expert, Mr. Sukesh Marla sir. Sukesh Marla sir, who is a currently he authored the book Learn MVC in 7 days. So the next video he is going to talk about a very complicated topic, interesting topic and an important topic, Angular unit testing. You must have done unit testing by using NUnit and VSTS unit test, where basically you can test your C# code, right? But when you talk about Angular unit testing, it is very different, because remember that in Angular, you have all those $scope objects, right? So if I want to go and test an Angular function, how do I test it, right? So the next video is coming from Sukesh Marla sir, who will actually discuss how to do Angular testing by using Jasmine. Thank you so much.